in the high schools, they have like an engineering kind of pathway, because I guess that's how high school works now. You're already choosing your career in high school. But anyway, so they have those pathways, and I think about 90% of the students are males. And so it was really kind of, sad for me to see that, females are still kind of shying away from these kind of fields. But it's also just encouragement for me to not only stay in my field, but to speak up and to, be a face of women in engineering, and to be vocal about these kind of things, like, hey, we face issues and we're not going to put up with them. So that when, these young women are joining this field, they have less shit to go through because we've already addressed it, or we're at least trying to now.
Welcome to Absolutely Not, the live podcast series dedicated to providing examples of setting personal boundaries at work and the vocabulary needed to name harm in those spaces. Thank y'all so much for being here today. I'm so grateful to everyone who keeps showing up and being a part of this growing community. I cannot thank y'all enough. Real quick, if you have not left a review on Apple Podcasts for the show, please do. I know that you love me and I love y'all too, but I do need that in writing. The key words for this episode are sexism, discrimination, passive-aggressive behavior. I encourage you to look up the definitions of these words and compare them to the definitions that you carry with you on a daily basis. If you need help comparing, please let me know. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp allows you to connect with one of 24,000 licensed therapists in a safe and private online environment. You pay a low flat fee for unlimited therapy with a therapist. Visit www.betterhelp.com/absolutelynot for more information and to get 10% off your first month. That link can be found in the show notes. Today's episode is titled Constructive Criticism. Now, I told y'all already, we probably won't be talking about constructive criticism in this episode, but that very unique title does come from a construction manager named Meleimoana Su'esu'e, she, her. Mele was born and raised in Hawaii. She went to college in upstate New York and received a BS in environmental resources engineering. She has been working as a construction manager for a large engineering firm for over 4 years now and is excited about drawing boundaries at work. Her identities are Samoan and white. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to talk about your journey with boundaries today. I'm even more excited because today, y'all, we get to congratulate Mele for putting in a 2 weeks notice. Yay! How excited are you about that?
I'm super excited, and it just happened to fall on the same day of this episode. So it just means that it was meant to be.
Thank you. See, she gets to share it here with y'all. What brought you to the point of the 2 weeks notice?
It's been kind of a long path, but it definitely all started off with listening to your podcast and just seeing all your posts and your words on social media, and just the whole message of absolutely not. I just started off kind of drawing pretty just reasonable boundaries in, I guess, the fall of last year, and it kind of just led up to a whole series of events that led to me leaving my job today.
Wow. I love the fact that, well, first of all, thank you so much for the kind words. Like, I do this work so that people, don't leave your job immediately, but have a plan and stuff. We said that earlier. But that's amazing that it's encouraging people to leave places that are not willing to adapt to reasonable boundaries. And I loved that you used the word reasonable. What kind of boundaries were you setting with these people?
So, I guess all boundaries are reasonable, but like, just to enunciate the fact that, like, I'm not asking you guys to like cut off your arm or something so that I feel comfortable. But so I guess the specific boundary that I started off with right when I messaged you, like, I was so excited about absolutely not, and just like, hey, I made a boundary, or aren't you proud of me, or something like that. But the first boundary that I started off with was actually a long time coming. I asked my boss to remove one of my coworkers from projects that I was working on. because I was incredibly uncomfortable working with this guy for a number of reasons, mostly being that he has like harassed me in the past before. So that was like the first boundary that I drew. I wasn't even like, hey, fire this guy, or hey, this guy's harassing me and that's bad. I was just like, hey, don't put him on my projects. Like I can work alone, I can work with other people, but my boundary is just I don't want to work with him.
Who you used a lot of words that people in your position are going to resonate with, or people in any organization. The fact that you went to a supervisor and kind of reported harassment to them, like you were being harassed on a team, and they didn't see that as like a reasonable reason to remove somebody from a team, is very disturbing, to say the very least. Well, that's an assumption. Did they end up removing him from your team?
No,
Oh,
he's still with us today.
oh. Oh, okay. So they didn't remove him from your team and you had to continue to work with him. What conversations followed your supervisor not being supportive in the boundaries that you needed to feel safe?
Well, it started off with kind of like the illusion that I was gonna be helped and that something was gonna happen. You know, my boss was like, okay, I'll take him off your projects. And that actually did happen for a short time. He was removed from my projects. I didn't have to put up with this guy. I thought um, everything was going to be okay. But eventually he slowly began to like trickle back into my projects, and nothing was really said about that. There was no like, oh yeah, is this okay with you? It just kind of happened. And I usually let things like that kind of go at work, but the fact that I had made that boundary and it was kind of obviously crossed at that point, I started to get annoyed. So at that point, I just made, well, several things led up to me filing a formal report, but eventually I did file like a formal report with HR. And since I work for a large company, instead of just going to my boss, going to the HR department is different. So it's like going to the website, I guess, of our like global company and like sending in a report to someone that I've never met in my life, someone who is specializing in HR complaints. And at that point, I was like, okay, for sure, something is going to get done now.
And did something get done?
And nothing got done. Yeah, so I made that HR report back in November, I think, and I was told that it would be addressed as soon as possible. And I was told that there may be some sort of delay to their investigation because of the holidays. So they're like, yeah, latest would be like end of December or even early January latest. So I talked to this person at HR in like November and heard nothing from her until, actually I never heard back from her. But then early January, I was like, okay, this is the time frame that she said would be the latest that the case would be resolved. So I followed up with her. I sent her an email following up on the case, and she never responded. And that was exactly 1 month ago that I sent that email. So it was just completely ignored, and the guy is still in my work life. And yeah, so I emailed her again today after talking to my boss, and I said, I just wanted to let you know that I am resigning from the company as a direct result of the failure to address my HR complaint. And who knows if she will reply.
I cannot thank you enough for sharing this, because these are the same stories we hear over and over again. It's just, we are made aware of the harm that is being caused to us in workplaces. We vocalize that harm to people, and we are just dismissed on every level. You went to several levels and still dismissed. One of the words that used when describing the actions that followed suit is illusion. And for me, that really aligns with like performative actions that a lot of organizations are doing nowadays. And when something is performative, of course, we don't know it's performative until this is a whole damn performance. We don't know it's performative until nothing occurs after the performance. Like, oh, y'all took my money and that was a really bad performance. I didn't get anything from that. I don't have any joy or anything. when did you realize that it was a performance?
Um, I don't even know the exact moment. It was kind of like slowly the illusion, the performance kind of went away, and I was like, oh, nobody cares. So I don't know if I have an exact moment when I realized it was a performance. I think like it within the past month it got super kind of humorous, because since we're like this huge global company, a lot of times they'll send out emails like those what are they called, those emails that go out to everyone. It's like a big old, hey, we care about this. And so I was getting a lot of those kind of emails like, hey, I'm trying to hesitate saying the company's name because I'm not trying to bash them right now, but hey, we here at this engineering company care about, um, what is the word they used? Code of conduct. Actually, I'm due right now to take a code of conduct training for the company, but I'm not going to take it because I'm leaving anyway. But yeah, just receiving those kind of emails, I'm like, so you guys can ignore my HR case that's been in for months, but you guys are gonna like spam me with all these emails about, hey, take this code of conduct, sir, to make sure that you can, uphold the code of conduct for a company because that's important. So I think that was one of the things where I really realized it was all kind of a show.
Mm. And I cannot thank you enough for breaking it down for people, because somebody out there is probably at the beginning of your timeline right now and thinking, okay, I sent my thing to HR. This should get done. And I love that you're breaking it down like, hey, prepare for it maybe not to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And now now somebody will know when to know that it's time to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you are leaving this organization, what will you be looking for in a new organization so that you know that they're not dancing in your face?
I think the easiest way um, for me to know that it's not like a whole performance, I think I'm going to look for, smaller companies. Not saying that big companies aren't capable of it, but just because of my experience, if I'm emailing someone in HR that lives in like Iceland or something, I don't know, somewhere that I have no idea like how far away that is, but I want to be able to like talk to a person when I have real complaints, and I want to be listened to. So that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for. I think that's a lot easier to do at a small company. Not saying that they wouldn't have their issues too, but I think that'll give me a little more confidence if I can like see, the higher ups, and I can actually be face to face with them and express my complaints to them.
Mm. That resonates a lot with me. I start when you get into organizations above a number or a capacity, you do like very much become a number. You are
Mm-hmm.
a person in the list, you are a part of the tally. And I'm sure that HR person on the other side was like, well, I have other things to do. Like
Yeah.
put that case to the side. There's no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a really good tip for people out there who are looking for organizations and who are wanting to feel like they are included and belong in the organization. A smaller organization could definitely, I mean, not all of them, we did not say that, but there's a more intimate relationship you're going to be able to have with your leadership in HR. How, now that we're talking about relationships, was the relationship with that leader that you went to, I guess the first time you realized you were being caused harm by the coworker, how was that relationship throughout your time there at that company?
It was honestly pretty good, which is one of the harder things about, realizing that your boundaries been crossed, or calling out harm, because, for the most part, my supervisor was super supportive, and like he was really heartbroken when he heard, my initial complaints, and he wanted to address them, but I guess he didn't really know how, because he even said himself nothing like that has ever come up in his time as a supervisor. Um, so we have a pretty good relationship, but I just think he didn't know how to address this issue. So ultimately, when I took it to HR and they couldn't address it either, everything just kind of fell through. So yeah, it was kind of harder to like say, hey, this wasn't taken care of well, because like I still kind of respect the guy, and he is like very nice, and didn't like intentionally cross the boundary or mean for this to happen, but at the same time he didn't help me get out of it. So that's a huge thing in recognizing that it was a bad situation.
Mm. And I hope everybody heard that. If you are not preventing the crossing of the boundary, you are contributing to that. Like you are on the enemy side now, because you're not on my side trying to fight the enemy. You've chosen a side. And I know that sounds very black and white, but this is the only life I have to live. What I'm supposed to do, wait for you to come around, wait for you to like pick up a sword on my side? You already put your sword down and you're just standing on the sidelines. I still have to fight. Like, and I'm using the sword and shield analogy because I'm thinking of all the resources that are lacking on this like battlefield that you're on. Like, you are fighting for your life, and HR don't have no sword. Your leadership doesn't have a sword. You have a shield, and you're like, okay, you know what? I don't even want this land. Like, I didn't even want to fight for this land, and I can definitely find land elsewhere. Who has been in your life that has been crucial to you, like remembering like, oh, this is not even my fight. Like, even if I have a sword and a shield, I can take that elsewhere and fight for another company that made a fuck fight for me.
Definitely my family, my sisters, my mom, everyone, my boyfriend, just the normal circle of people that I go to when I rant about these kind of things, because I can take a lot of crap at work, but then as soon as I get home, I'll start ranting about it, even if I didn't really take action upon it myself at work. I'll just come home and like rant about the shit I had to put up with at work, and then eventually, like, my boyfriend or my sisters or my mom were like, do something about it. Like, don't put up with this shit. So that was huge, and actually coming forward and doing something.
Oh, I like, that's so many gems, man. Like, oof. But that gem is about the accountability. Like, you can't just keep like, wow, this is a shitty place to work. This is a shitty place to work. These people do not care about me. We heard it. We know that. Why are you still working there? Like, what are you doing about that? Or have you told somebody it's a shitty place to work? Have you implemented new boundaries? Man, that accountability is really hard to find. And sometimes there are people out there who aren't surrounded like people like that. Or hold on, let me backtrack. Sometimes you're not surrounded around people who will hold you accountable. Have you ever been surrounded by people who were just like, so suck it up, like that's the way it is?
Yeah, I guess that goes for my coworkers, because when I called a couple of my coworkers today to let them know that I was putting in my resignation, just for a heads up for them as far as workloads moving forward. And they kind of expressed, like, they were all like, oh, congratulations. They're like, yeah, we hate it here too. So like it was kind of like we were like all stuck in this echo chamber as coworkers and under this huge company. Like, oh, it sucks to work here, but what are we gonna do? Just work here. So that was definitely a bad environment to be in, because a lot of them knew, even if they didn't know specifically the shit that I was putting up with, a lot of them were unhappy and had faced, similar kind of issues. And they were all kind of just like, oh, well, we suck it up because that's what construction managers do. We'll be fine.
Will y'all be fine? Will y'all be okay? Okay.
Well, at the same time, they're also not women, so they're experiencing the work. Yeah, they're experiencing that work environment a lot differently than I am. I know they have their own issues, but I don't think they went through it the same way as a woman in the workplace would. So that was also a huge difference.
And I cannot thank you enough for emphasizing that difference for you from the other construction worker managers that were there, because that's a big ass difference. People want to act like, oh no, we treat everybody the same. No, you don't. Or I would not have put in my 2 weeks notice here. Like, no, you don't. What were some of the differences you saw between yourself and the male construction managers that were there?
I guess the main difference is how I was treated, specifically by that one coworker I had mentioned that I filed the complaint against. For one thing, one of the examples which I put in my complaint, I was offering to go to a meeting one day. It was actually an out of work meeting. It was something that we did with the community to like volunteer at a local high school to help get into engineering and stuff. So it was sent out to me and my coworkers to attend this meeting if he wanted to. It was optional. And so I emailed back the group, oh, I will attend this. I'm really excited about attending things like this, and it's really close to my house too. So you guys don't have to attend if you don't want to, because I will definitely be a rep at the school. But anyway, so I volunteered to go to this meeting, and this coworker almost immediately responded to me, and he said, oh, I will attend too, just so that if there's any men there that doubt your credentials in this field, I can speak up for you. And I was just so taken aback because my boss was on this email chain too, so he saw that that's how that man was speaking to me. I was really taken aback that I was literally being told by a coworker, oh, you're a woman, so no one's really gonna take anything that you say seriously in construction, so I'll be the man there to translate for you and to be I don't know, I guess some sort of like bodyguard, because he said he was afraid that the other men were going to doubt me, which is kind of ironic because, you know, he would probably be the most disrespectful man in the room.
I am about to cry, and I don't know if it's because of anger or like pain or sorry, it's 2022. Who the fuck? And it sounds very much like a projection of, and like passive aggressive of like, I literally don't believe you're able to do this on your own. So I will be there to represent this organization that I love so very much. I cannot thank you for giving such a very precise example of the shit that occurs when you work in the field that you work in, because a lot of people will dismiss that. They're like, oh, that's just how he saves women, or he's that's the nice thing to do. Why are you not grateful for that? Bitch, I can save my damn self. Thank you. That's how I got here. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I really hate how it was framed too, to kind of be like, oh, I'm the savior, like I'm an ally to women, and then it's like, no, that's not what that means at all. You're not helping when you say things like that.
And so organizations who have people like that, because I know y'all have them, please think about, like, take this right here, this situation, and think about how you would have responded. Mele did say that her leader was on that email chain. He definitely could have jumped in and be like, no, it's fine. You can stay your ass here and don't ever talk like that ever again to one of your coworkers, because they are an equal to you. So they don't need your help. If they ask for it, they'll move forward with that. But to have somebody who is in a leadership position not be able to actually lead, it has me questioning their competency as a leader. Were they, oh, you know what, that's not even a question for you to answer, Mele, because you don't work for those people no more. There are so many leaders out there who are not willing to stand up and to move forward. And Mele, it sounds like you are going to be an amazing leader, because your ability to stand up and name harm in spaces where other people are not naming harm, quite frankly, because they're not experiencing the same harm as you, is so crucial to being a leader. What would you encourage other leaders who share your identities to do if they find themselves in the same position?
I guess I'd encourage them to be more proactive about things. I was really hesitant to ever come forward with any kind of complaint. And I do feel bad about that. Like, I've definitely grown a lot over the years to come forward with this, but I don't think that I shouldn't have had to come forward and do all this effort to say, hey, this is happening, when it was happening in front of everyone else too. So I think as a leader, you're going to be busy, you're going to be getting swamped with emails and everything, but it's your job to actually look into these kind of things that are going on right in front of you. Like, I don't care how busy you are, if you're in charge of, taking care of these people, you need to take that seriously. And so I think, if I'm ever in the same position, I want to make it a point to actually pay attention. And even before someone comes forward with a problem, if I see something that may be problematic, just to kind of approach that person and kind of get their thoughts or their feelings on it, because a lot of times no one's going to say anything until they're asked. And then at that point they may be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that is an issue for me. I'm glad you asked to talk about that.
Hmm. Mela, I love the words that you are using in this. The word proactive is so necessary. As leaders, we know that the workload that is put upon you is sometimes like 70% actual working and 30% management. And if that's the case at your organization, you need to talk to them about your workload, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. But I love that you said the proactiveness comes from the leadership team. It shouldn't be coming from people who are on the team. It should be coming from the leadership team. And it reminds me a lot about the keywords that we have for this episode. Like, if you don't know the definitions of that word, like for you and I, man, like we immediately like, okay, that's sexism. Like what you just sent me was sexist as hell. And for some other people on that email chain, maybe they're like, oh, what a nice guy. Like that was really nice of him to step in and be her dad. Like, but so if you are unaware of the definitions of sexism, if you need examples, you need to start doing your research. You need to start going to more trainings, ask your organization for more trainings of this so you can be a more proactive leader. But like, were there any trainings available that you could go to or your leadership team could go to because they knew you were different, like they knew you were different on the team. Were they proactive in leadership and how to train a different employee on the team?
No, I think it was all the kind of like cookie cutter trainings that we all get from like the national team. They kind of just email it to us every quarter or whatever they have to fulfill, and just say, hey, do this training of a random video of people in the office, and then click on all the right boxes, and then we'll check you off as trained in not being a sexist or something like that.
Man, not being a sexist. I remember back in the 80s when I took that training. And it's probably like a training from the 80s. Just like, yeah, just don't hit women at work. And oh my gosh. But that reminds me of the illusion that you talked about earlier. So for anybody who's listening to this, if you think you're in an illusion right now and you're like, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Like I am the only one here. So maybe there's so many check marks. We have went through this episode on what an illusion looks like. So man, Melly, thank you so much for breaking it down. And somebody's going to have an amazing checklist to take to their leadership team tomorrow. Please don't resign though, because tomorrow it's almost Valentine's Day. You will need money for that. But thank you so much for breaking it down. One of the things I'd love for you to share with everyone who's listening to this, because I'm sure there are people who are really like, well, just switch fields. Like, why are you working in this field? Mele, why don't you switch fields?
If someone ever asked me that, like seriously, it would just be more motivation to stay in this field, because I'm stubborn like that. But why should I switch fields? I mean, it's something that I'm interested in doing and I'm passionate about. Maybe not construction management specifically, but definitely in the realm of engineering. I think a big reason why I definitely won't switch fields is, so when I mentioned that we went to the high schools to do kind of volunteer work there. Right now in the high schools, they have like an engineering kind of pathway, because I guess that's how high school works now. You're already choosing your career in high school. But anyway, so they have those pathways, and I think about 90% of the students are males. And so it was really kind of sad for me to see that females are still kind of shying away from these kind of fields. But it's also just encouragement for me to not only stay in my field, but to speak up and to be a face of women in engineering, and to be vocal about these kind of things, like, hey, we face issues and we're not going to put up with them, so that when these young women are joining this field, they have less shit to go through because we've already addressed it, or we're at least trying to now.
I mean, like, for people who are like, okay, blah, 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 literally that's how change gets made. It's literally one person being like, I'm not taking this shit anymore. Then a community is built, organizations are built, and society moves forward. For the people that are thinking like, blah, 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 no, that is how change gets made. Mela is making change in her own way. I'm sorry. For those of you that don't know, I was an aviation mechanic. I also went to college for civil engineering. So this is very close to my heart. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. There are so many people who are, okay, yeah, they are stuck back in the times. It's 2022, pops. You get it pushing, take a new training, please. Mele, thank you so much for breaking it down. I know that you already shouted out so many people in your support system. Is there anybody that you specifically want to shout out so that they know that you have love for them and you appreciate everything you've done for them?
Oh, I mentioned my sisters, my family, and my boyfriend. I forgot to mention Joyce. She's one of my, I went to college with her, so we're both female engineers. And so kind of like as a sanity check before I did the whole HR report and went to actually formalize my complaint, I talked to another woman who's in engineering, and I was like, hey, I'm putting up with this shit. This is messed up, right? Because when I tell my family that I believe, and they say, hey, that's bad, I believe that, but at the same time I'm like, well, they're not in the field. Maybe they're like, as soon as they're very protective of me too, so maybe as soon as they hear, oh, anything bad, they're like, yeah, that's bad, don't put up with that, Melly. And I did take that seriously, but I also wanted to double check with like another female in engineering and be like, hey, this is messed up, right? And she was like, yeah, that's you need to report that immediately. So yeah, just another person, one of many people, especially you, Katrina. You've been so helpful in me coming forward with this, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for shouting out, Joyce. I think that's another point to this is, Mele, you are going to be, Mele, you are going to be that person for somebody. Somebody is graduating college this year or is going to graduate later this year. It's going to be so bright and bushy-tailed to get into engineering. And you are going to be that person for them to be like, no, fuck them. Like, don't report it immediately. Like, no, that is not how we do stuff here. You should not accept that. We are moving forward. And if you need help, I am here for you. I've been through it already so that you don't have to. So thank you so much. Somebody put in the chat, like, for being a pioneer. You are literally trailblazing for people so that this shit doesn't have to happen anymore. Thank you so much for sharing it here on the show. Before we wrap up today, what would be the top 3 tips to the people who are listening to this and like, well, damn, I'm about to go talk to some people tomorrow. What would be some tips you would share with them about the conversations they need to have?
I would say, for one, speak up like immediately. It doesn't even have to be like, I went through all these checks, like these sanity checks to these people in my life, like, oh, am I okay to report this? I shouldn't have done that. I should have just been like, this is bullshit, and report that immediately. So don't hesitate. And then I would also say, it's their job. Once you report that to them, it's their job to be proactive about solving your problem. So you shouldn't have to follow up or push the case through or say, hey, how's this case going? Like, if they don't solve it, or you don't see any progress on your issue within whatever you consider to be a reasonable time frame, just leave. Just don't even put up with it anymore.
Ooh, and I know somebody needed that. Like, they needed validation in that. So often we are told, like, even in the space that you were in, so many people not responding, what messes with you is like, okay, maybe this is not a priority. Like, maybe this is not something to, like, I'm making too much of this. No, this is my fucking life. Like, I have to work here. I will not. So I thank you so much for validating so many people's experiences. Before we wrap up today, are there any last minute sprinkles that you'd like to share with the audience?
No, just thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate being here. And yeah, I'm super excited for the future, and that I put in my 2 weeks today. So
I'm super excited for your future as well, because I know that the next organization that you go into, even if it's not your last, I mean, this 2022, it's definitely not going to be your last, but it's going to be better than the organization that you came from. And that's what I'm excited about, is people moving their expectations higher than what they came from, because we don't deserve this shit. To anybody listening, I hope you take away so much from this, because I took away so much from this. Thank you so much, Mele. And Everyone keep setting those boundaries and saying absolutely not to everything unaligned. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Absolutely Not. Your support means the world to me. You can always further support the show by leaving a review or visiting the Support the Mission page on my website, www.katrinastroll.com. My website is also where you can register for upcoming live episodes, watch amazing past episodes of Absolutely Not, and buy Absolutely Not merch. Yay! Until next time, keep setting those boundaries and saying absolutely not to anything unaligned. See you next time.